I heard about the Japanese urban legend. It's scary. I've always been fascinated by urban legends, especially those from Japan. There's something about their myths that make them feel too real, too close to reality. It was a normal night when I stumbled upon a story I had never heard before, something called Kuchisake-Onna. They say she appears on quiet streets late at night, wearing a surgical mask, which isn't unusual in Japan. But here's the twist. She'll stop you and ask, "Am I pretty?" The moment you hesitate or give the wrong answer, she pulls down her mask, revealing a mouth that's slit from ear to ear. What you say next can determine your fate. I brushed it off as a simple urban legend, one of many to give you a cheap thrill. But the more I thought about it, the more the details started to creep into my mind. That same night after reading the legend, I had to walk home alone. It was colder than usual, and the streets felt unusually empty. There was an eerie silence, as if even the air itself was afraid to move. As I turned the corner, I saw a woman standing by the street lamp. She was wearing a long coat and, just as the legend described, a surgical mask. I told myself it was nothing, just a coincidence. But as I passed by her, I could feel her eyes on me. "Am I pretty?" a soft voice whispered. My heart stopped. It couldn't be. I forced myself to look at her, trying to suppress the fear rising in my chest. Her eyes were empty, almost hollow, as if she wasn't entirely human. I nodded, unsure of what else to do. She slowly reached for her mask, her fingers trembling. My legs wanted to run, but I couldn't move. Every horror story I'd ever heard felt like a joke compared to this. She pulled down her mask just a little, but I turned and ran before I could see what was beneath. Since that night, I've never been the same. I hear footsteps following me in empty streets. Sometimes I feel a presence behind me, just waiting for me to turn around. And the worst part, I'm starting to dream about her, only this time, she doesn't stop at pulling down the mask. I know this isn't over. The legend may be real, and it's not something you can just walk away from. Since that night, I've been trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. Just a random woman on the street, nothing more. But no matter how much I try to rationalize it, the unease gnaws at me. I haven't been able to sleep properly. Every time I close my eyes, I see her, standing in the dark, waiting, the mask half pulled down. The image is burned into my mind. It didn't help that I started seeing her everywhere. One evening, about a week after the first encounter, I was walking home again, trying to avoid the same street. I thought taking a different route would calm me down, make me forget about it. But just as I crossed into a quiet alley, I saw her again. This time she was at the far end, standing in the shadows. Her face was hidden beneath that mask, but I could feel her eyes on me, cold and piercing. I froze. My instincts screamed at me to run, but something about her held me in place. My breath came in short gasps and I felt my heart pounding in my throat. Then she started moving, slow, deliberate steps toward me. The sound of her shoes clicking against the pavement echoed in the silence. "Am I pretty?" she asked again, her voice low, almost mechanical. I was too terrified to speak. My legs wouldn't respond. She kept walking, her face inching closer, and I could see her fingers twitching at the edge of her mask, ready to pull it down again. "I don't know," I stammered, the words spilling out before I could stop them. She paused, her hand frozen in midair, as if she was deciding what to do next. The air around me grew heavy, suffocating, and I realized she was closer now. Her mask shifted, revealing just a glimpse of her mouth, stretched wide in an unnatural, jagged smile. Suddenly a noise, a loud clatter, broke the silence. Someone had knocked over a trash can at the end of the alley. In a blink, the woman disappeared into the shadows, melting away like a ghost. I didn't waste a second. I turned and ran, not stopping until I reached my apartment. I slammed the door shut, bolted the locks, and sank to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. That's when I realized she wasn't just a legend. She was following me. Since then, I've tried everything. I've changed my routes, stayed out of the dark, even avoided going out at night altogether. But none of it works. I keep seeing her, out of the corner of my eye, in reflections, even in my own home. It's like she's always watching, waiting for the right moment. I'm scared, more scared than I've ever been. I don't know what's coming next, but I feel like it's only a matter of time before she catches up to me. And the worst part? I think I'm starting to hear her voice when I'm alone. Am I pretty? She whispers, even when no one's there. This isn't over. It's just beginning. I haven't told anyone about this. Who would believe me? It's just an urban legend, a story whispered around to scare people, right? But every night since, it's gotten worse. I wake up to the sound of footsteps just outside my bedroom door, pacing, stopping, waiting. The creak of the floorboards sends chills down my spine, and I find myself holding my breath, praying it's just my imagination. Last night was different. It was more than just footsteps. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, feeling like someone was in the room with me. I reached for my phone on the bedside table, its dim light barely illuminating the room. My hands shook as I fumbled with it, and that's when I saw it. A reflection, just for a split second, in the black screen of my phone. She was standing at the foot of my bed. I bolted upright, gasping, but when I turned the light on, there was no one there. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what was real and what wasn't. But then I saw it, something small but undeniable. The closet door, which I always keep shut, was slightly ajar. I couldn't move. It was as if the room itself had turned against me, trapping me in this nightmare. My instincts were screaming, telling me not to open the closet, but the fear of not knowing what was inside was worse. Slowly, I got out of bed, my knees weak, each step heavy. The door creaked as I pulled it open. Inside was empty. I let out a shaky breath, feeling ridiculous. But as I turned to go back to bed, I heard it. A whisper, so close it felt like it was right behind my ear. Am I pretty? I spun around, my back pressed against the wall. She was there, no longer a ghostly figure in the shadows, but right in front of me. Her eyes were hollow, her face pale and stretched, and the mask was half off, revealing the twisted, grotesque smile beneath. My legs gave way, and I collapsed onto the floor, unable to scream. For what felt like an eternity, she just stood there, staring at me with that terrifying smile. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything, but I was frozen, paralyzed by fear. Her voice was soft, almost tender, as she leaned closer. You can't run from me. And then, just like that, she was gone. No sound, no trace, just the lingering feeling of dread that clung to every inch of my room. I don't know how long I stayed on the floor, shaking, trying to convince myself it was a nightmare. But this is real. I don't know why she's after me, or how long this will last, but I can't escape her. Every time I think I'm safe, she comes back, closer than before. I don't know what she wants, but I have a sinking feeling that she won't stop until I give her the answer she's waiting for. And I'm terrified of what happens when I do. This isn't just a story anymore. She's real. And if you ever hear a voice whisper, "Am I pretty?" don't answer. This is far from over. I've been too scared to sleep since that night. Every creak, every shadow, every whisper of wind feels like her. I've tried staying awake for as long as I can, keeping the lights on, but exhaustion eventually wins. And that's when she comes, when I'm most vulnerable. 2 nights ago, I couldn't hold out any longer. I drifted off in front of the TV, hoping that maybe being in a brighter room would keep her away. But in my dream, I was back in the alley. It was just like the first time I saw her, except now I couldn't move at all. She wasn't standing at a distance this time. No, she was right behind me. I could feel her breath on the back of my neck. Am I pretty? The sound of her voice snapped me awake, but the nightmare followed me into reality. I was still in the living room, my face lit by the flickering glow of the TV, but I wasn't alone. She was sitting on the couch next to me. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, afraid to look at her directly. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating, as if it were being drained by her presence. Slowly, she turned her head toward me, her eyes gleaming in the dim light, dead yet piercing. The edges of her mask were stained with something dark, and I could see the corners of that mutilated smile peeking through. I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted for the door, stumbling over the coffee table, barely able to breathe. I grabbed the doorknob and yanked it open, only to come face to face with her. She was there, standing in the doorway, her smile fully exposed now, stretching impossibly wide, her lips split from ear to ear, blood glistening in the soft glow of the street lamp outside. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice echoing in my mind. I don't know how, but I managed to slam the door and lock it. My hands were trembling, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. For what felt like hours, I sat huddled in the corner, staring at the door, waiting for her to break through. But she never did. The next morning, I found myself questioning if any of it was real. There were no signs of her. The door was fine, the couch was untouched. But I know it wasn't a dream. I felt her, I saw her, and I'm not the only one. I went online, searching for anything I could find about this legend, Kuchisake-Onna. I read stories of others who had encountered her, people who claimed to have escaped, but most of the accounts ended the same way, the disappearances. The people who saw her too many times simply vanished. No trace, no explanation. And now I can feel it. The walls are closing in. I'm not just seeing her in dark corners anymore. She's getting bolder. I've started hearing footsteps behind me in broad daylight, glimpses of her reflection in shop windows, the soft, familiar whisper just as I'm about to turn a corner. Am I pretty? I don't know how long I have left, but I can't shake the feeling that she's getting closer. Every night, it's like she's waiting for something, for me to finally break, to give in. Maybe that's what she wants. Maybe she feeds on fear, on the terror of those who can't escape her grasp. But I can't run forever. I don't know how this ends, or if I'll even survive to find out. I can't shake the feeling that she's watching me right now, waiting for the moment I slip again. And when that moment comes, I don't think I'll be able to escape her this time. I haven't left my apartment in days. I can't. Every time I reach for the door, I feel her on the other side, waiting. The world outside has become a maze of mirrors. Every corner could be her, every shadow a trap. My apartment, though suffocating, feels like the only place where I still have control. But even here, I'm no longer safe. The other night, something changed. It was past midnight, and I was sitting on the floor, trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen. I didn't hear her come in. There was no creak of the floor, no sound at all. But when I glanced up, she was there, standing in the middle of the room. Her face was uncovered this time. The grotesque slit, the twisted grin that seemed to stretch endlessly, split her cheeks into jagged, bloody lines. Her eyes, those hollow, lifeless eyes, bore into mine. My body refused to move. It was like I had forgotten how to breathe, how to blink. I was completely at her mercy. She didn't speak right away. She just watched me, as if she enjoyed the fear coursing through me. And then slowly she took a step forward, her movements deliberate, like a predator playing with its prey. "Am I pretty?" she whispered, her voice dripping with malice. I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, and my heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. My legs felt like stone. All I could do was shake my head, barely able to form a thought beyond the raw terror gripping me. Her smile widened, if that was even possible. It was as if the corners of her mouth stretched further, splitting her face even more. She crouched down, her face level with mine, so close that I could feel the icy chill of her breath on my skin. "You shouldn't have said that," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The room seemed to shift around me, the walls warping and closing in, making it hard to tell what was real anymore. My vision blurred as a sharp pain shot through my chest, like cold fingers gripping my heart. I gasped for air, clutching at my chest, but she didn't stop. Her laughter, soft at first, grew louder, more distorted, echoing in my head. Then just as quickly as it started, she was gone. The pain disappeared, and I was left alone, gasping for breath on the floor. But the worst part wasn't her sudden vanishing act. It was the realization that she had touched me. I looked down at my arm and saw it, a single bloody scratch trailing from my wrist to my elbow. It burned, the skin raw and red. I know now she's no longer playing. This isn't just a haunting or some twisted game. She's marked me, claimed me in some way I can't explain, and I can feel it getting worse. Every hour, every second, I can sense her watching. I don't know when she'll come again, but I can feel her presence growing stronger, closer. I've heard stories of people disappearing without a trace, swallowed by the urban legends they couldn't escape. And I think that's what's happening to me. She's pulling me into her world, a place where reality and nightmare blur, and once I'm there, I'm not sure I'll ever return. I don't know how to stop her. Maybe there's no way, but I have to keep trying. Maybe there's something, some clue in the legends, something the others missed. Because if I don't figure it out soon, I'm afraid she'll finish what she started. And when she does, I'll be gone, just like the others. I don't know how I'm still here. I'm barely hanging on. Each day feels like I'm slipping further into a nightmare I can't wake from. Every inch of my apartment feels tainted by her presence, her cold, dead stare looming over me, even when I'm alone. I can't escape it. I've stopped sleeping. Every time I close my eyes, I feel her near. It's like she's just waiting for me to let my guard down, to drift off, so she can pull me into whatever hell she came from. And I can't risk that. But I'm losing track of time, of reality itself. The days blur into nights, and the air around me feels heavy, almost suffocating, as if she's slowly closing in. Last night, though, something happened. Something worse than before. I was sitting at my desk trying to distract myself with anything. TV, music, anything to drown out the creeping silence. My eyes burned from exhaustion, and my head was pounding from lack of sleep. But then, a noise. At first, I thought it was just the building settling, or maybe my mind playing tricks on me again. But then I heard it again, a soft, deliberate knock on the window. I froze. I live on the 4th floor. There's no balcony, no fire escape. There's no way anyone could be outside my window. But there it was, that soft, rhythmic knock, like fingers tapping lightly against the glass. With every ounce of courage I could muster, I turned toward the window. My heart stopped. Through the thin curtain, I could make out the faint outline of a figure, tall, slender, unmoving. And then I heard it, that voice, her voice. "Am I pretty?" I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, panic rising like a flood. I wanted to run, to hide, but my body wouldn't obey. The knock came again, louder this time, more insistent. I had no choice. Slowly, I pulled the curtain back. There she was, standing on the other side of the window, her face pressed against the glass. The mask was gone. Her entire face was exposed now, pale, cracked, her mouth twisted into that same grotesque smile, her lips split open from ear to ear, oozing with dark, wet blood. Her eyes locked onto mine, empty but alive with some malevolent force. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair as I tried to put as much distance between us as possible. But she didn't move. She just stared, her smile widening as if she knew there was nowhere for me to go. Then as I blinked, she was gone. The window was empty, the night beyond it still and silent. But I knew better. She was still there, somewhere, waiting. I don't know how much longer I can take this. She's everywhere now, every reflective surface, windows, mirrors, even the screen of my phone. She's there, watching me, waiting for the moment I slip, the moment I let fear consume me completely. But what terrifies me the most is that I'm not alone. I've started seeing her out in the streets, following other people. Just shadows at first, but then clearer. I passed by a man at the station this morning, and I saw her standing behind him, her hand resting on his shoulder, her lips moving as if whispering something into his ear. He didn't even notice. That's when I realized, it's not just me. She's spreading, and I'm part of it now. I'm part of her legend. I don't know how to stop her, but I have a feeling she won't stop until she has me, or worse, until she has someone else. And when that time comes, when she finally takes me, I'll disappear, just like all the others before me. I'm writing this now because I don't think I have much time left. The line between reality and nightmare has completely blurred. Every time I catch my reflection, she's there. In the windows, the mirror, even my phone screen, I see her staring back at me with that twisted smile. Last night I woke up to the feeling of cold fingers brushing my face. My heart raced and I could barely breathe. She was sitting at the edge of my bed, her head tilted, eyes glistening with malice. Her voice was a whisper, but it echoed in my mind like a scream. "Am I pretty?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. All I could do was stare in horror as her face inched closer to mine, that smile stretching wider, as if she was ready to claim me. My mind was racing, but I knew, deep down, there was no escape. This was it. And then, just like every other time, she vanished. But I know it won't be long now. She's closing in, and soon, she'll take me. When that happens, I'll be gone. Just like everyone else who dared to cross her path. There's no running from her. Once you hear her ask that question, you're already lost. So if you ever hear someone whisper, "Am I pretty?" don't answer. And whatever you do, don't look. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe, like, and share for more terrifying tales. Stay tuned for more horror stories, and remember, sometimes the scariest legends are the ones that feel all too real.